Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are connecting from today. Happy Tuesday, if it's still Tuesday for you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us in this Hacking HR live chat series. We started this series at the beginning of the year, and we have been inviting great, brilliant, talented guests to this show, most of them book authors, to share about the research, the insights, the ideas, the recommendations that they have written about in their books, and to let us know about them in our community. So I'm hoping that you have found a lot of value in these conversations. If you have missed any of the previous live chats that we've had before, just go to our website, hackinghr.io, click on live chats. You will find them all in there. Evidently, they are not live anymore, but it's all cool content, great ideas, great insights. And well, I am encouraging you to go and check them out. I got to tell you that we do this for the community, we do this for you. But selfishly, I've been learning so much out of every single one of these conversations. It's been truly amazing to be able to learn so much. And I'm reading most of the books from the authors that I bring to the show, but it's great to hear from them firsthand about their stories, their ideas, and why they wrote those books and whatnot. So once again, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. For those of you who are connected online right now in any of our social media channels, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, or Twitter, please let us know where you are connecting from in the world. It would be awesome to know where everybody is. And if you have any questions, any comments, anything that you want to share with the community, related to the topic, please. We've been getting a lot of comments about people I know, people trying to find a job and people posting jobs in these live sessions. Well, there are spaces for that, and perhaps this may not be the right space for that. And I am encouraging you to share your insights and your questions about the topic that we are talking about today. So super excited to talk about kindness. And if you follow what we do in Hacking HR, you will notice that, or you will note that we have been sharing a lot of content about kindness, empathy, compassion, specifically at work. And in all honesty, I don't know about you, but we always talk about building great cultures, great organizational cultures, right? And that's complex. There's it's not rocket science, but it's not easy either. And one thing that I get frustrated about is that we are waiting for somebody, I don't know who, but we're waiting for somebody to build or create the conditions for a culture of kindness and compassion to emerge at work. We're waiting maybe for the CEO in a town hall meeting to say, now I want my culture or the culture of this company to be a culture of kindness and compassion. And while that may happen, that a CEO actually says that, a culture of kindness and compassion, a culture of all the good things that we want to see in the workplace doesn't happen always top down. It can be mandated top down, but that doesn't mean that it's going to actually play out in everyday interactions top down. You, everybody, including you, whether you have a formal position of authority in your company, you can create a culture of kindness with your everyday interactions, with the way you build relationships and connections with everybody else in the workplace. And this, to me, has been quite a mission in the Hacking HR community, trying to inspire everybody to build those cultures of kindness and compassion, whether they have power or not. If you engage in intentional acts of kindness and compassion with the people that are closer to you at work, whether it is one, two, or three people, it doesn't matter. Whether you're leading a small team, you are already building a culture of kindness and compassion. You don't have to wait for the CEO to say that that's the kind of culture that he or she wants to have. You can build that. I don't know about you, but I believe that if we are able to embrace that idea and engage in acts of kindness and compassion at work, we're going to make not only the world, but our everyday lives so much better. And today we're going to be talking about kindness. Again, one of my favorite topics. We're going to be talking about the 5 sides of kindness. And I am super excited to welcome Dr. David to the screen with me. Not good morning to you. Good afternoon to you, David. How are you?
I'm very well, Enrique. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much. Super excited to have this conversation. You can tell, I don't know if, I'm super passionate about kindness from the perspective of seeing so much pain and suffering in the world. And all I think about is like, why do we have to make it so hard for everybody, right? I mean, why can't we just engage in small acts of kindness every day and make our workplaces, the everything better for others, but also for ourselves as well. And I am excited about this conversation. But before we dig deeper into the book and the work you've done, I would love for you, David, to please introduce yourself to our community. Please let us know more about who you are, the work you've done, where you're connecting from, anything that you want to share with the community.
I'm a writer. I write mostly on kindness. I'm a speaker as well. I do lots of talks on the science of kindness, sometimes on self-esteem and even the mind-body connection. I started out as an R&D scientist in the pharmaceutical industry. I used to develop medicines for cardiovascular disease and cancer. And I became interested in the placebo effect. And that led me into exploring all the ways that states of mind and how you feel can have a physical impact in your brain and also in your body, and so that's what brought me into the subject of kindness, because kindness is something that after you do something kind, you have a feeling, and that feeling has really tremendous physical impacts in your brain and the circuits of your brain, the biology of your brain, but also all throughout your body. And it has a contagious effect everywhere, even in the workplace as well. So that's how my route really into this subject.
Oh, that is fantastic. And I always I'm not a scientist of kindness, but I have read enough to know that when we engage in an act of kindness, we are, of course, doing it for the other person, right? We're trying to make their lives better through that act of kindness. But the beauty of kindness, I actually call it the violation of the second law of thermodynamics, right? You know that in every system in the world, when you inject energy into something, you're never going to get the same or more energy. You're getting less energy, right? Because there's inefficiencies in the system. But kindness is the only thing, or one of the only things that violates that law, because you inject kindness in the world and you get more out of it. You're making the life of the other person better. You're making the life of the observer better, and you're making your own life better. And that to me is so beautiful.
Yeah, that's a really good summary of how it all works, because there's something, I think lots of research shows that being kind does actually make you happier. And there's a number of reasons. On a purely biological level. When you be kind to someone, you actually cause elevation of little, you call them happy chemicals like dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin in the brain. But if you continually be kind, what you actually get is physical change in brain structure. Like any habits that you develop eventually become wired into the circuitry of your brain. So when your habit becomes kindness, and we know this from studying people who do kindness, or let's call them kindfulness practices. So many people are familiar with mindfulness.
Yeah.
So if you do mindfulness, there's physical change in this frontal part of the brain just above your eyes. But any practice that's mindful, but your attention, instead of being on your breath, for example, your attention is on kindness, whether you're the giver, the receiver, or the witness to it on a consistent basis, then what you get from kindfulness practices is also a physical change in the brain, also here in the front, but to some other areas which are associated with happiness and joy. So written into the biology of the brain, it becomes the more consistently you think kindly, or speak kindly, or just treat people with respect and trust in any form of kindness or warmth, it causes this physical change in the brain, which makes it easier in life to access happiness and joy. And that's why in the longer term, what we find is repeated acts of kindness do actually violate that second law and cause an increase in our own energy. Well.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. And by the way, me so much reading about kindness, and I have never found the word kindfulness anywhere. I think I'm gonna quote you, but I'm gonna be using some of that word going forward. I love it. By the way, it feels more as the outward projection of the changes and the goodness that we want to bring to the world. Right? Mindfulness is about us. Kindfulness is about others, which at the end also kind of ends up being about us too, right? But it was not meant to be that way in the first place. David, let me ask you this: Are we wired for kindness, and is that kindness lost during our our adulting process, going to school, going to work, seeing all the things that remove kind of like that kindness out of us?
Yeah, well, actually, we are genetically wired for kindness. In fact, there's genes that produce substances in the body that are associated with the experience of kindness. I call them kindness hormones. So they're really they're akin to, most people are familiar with stress hormones. So
Hmm.
to a scientist, stress hormones are the biological products of the experience of stress. So when you feel you have an experience of stress, the products of that are stress hormones. So when you have an experience of kindness, the products of that are what I call kindness hormones. So it turns out the genes that produce kindness hormones are some of the oldest in the human genome. They're about 500 million years old and
Wow.
2 days. I'm only joking about the 2 days, but 500 million years old. So being kind is actually a natural instinct to show kindness and empathy and compassion. It's a natural instinct. Sometimes what happens in our lives is, life can be challenging from time to
Yeah.
time. Life can be tough in the adulting process, and it's not that we lose the biology of it, but sometimes life can put a bit so much pressure on us
Yeah.
that we don't immediately go for the kindness. And it's just because of, I think maybe you think of it as the weight of life's experiences for some people. But the point is, the kindness is always there. Sometimes we just have to help each other to tease it out of each other.
Yeah. What I'm thinking is that also it is something akin of like, trying to work out your muscles, right? If your New Year's resolution is I want to get fitter, I want to run a marathon, or I want to lift 250 pounds, and you haven't done that in 5 years, you won't be able to do it overnight. You have to
Yeah.
work that out, and that will require, and I would love for you to develop on this idea, but that would require a lot of intentionality, because if you want to run that marathon and you're setting your, I don't know, your schedule to run that marathon, in March, at the end of March, then you have 4 months, right, to train. But every day, because you haven't done that for a long time, every day you will have to wake up and say, I got to go out the door and I got to get the work in, right? I have to do the workout. I have to do the training, because it won't happen just by, sheer miracle.
Mm.
And I would love for you to develop in this idea, about this idea of being very intentional about engaging in kindness.
Yeah, it works in exactly the same way. I think a good analogy is, if we've not been used to doing intentional acts of kindness, perhaps, let's say, think of it like part of the brain, like a wheat field or a cornfield, and our normal habits are the single path through the cornfield. So there's a well-worn path through the cornfield. And so let's say you arrive at the cornfield one day and you want to get to the other side, you tend to take the well-worn path because it takes less effort. So if you're all of a sudden deciding to do intentional acts of kindness, it can take a little bit of effort because you have to form a new path.
Yeah.
So maybe you have to work hard and flatten the corn down, and you think this is hard work. It's much easier to use the existing path. But if you keep doing it intentionally, coming every day and pushing a little bit more down, bits of corn down, eventually you'll get through the other side. And if you keep walking that path, it becomes really easy and easier in time.
Yeah.
And because you're not walking down the other path, it then begins to overgrow. And after a remarkably short space of time, the kindness becomes a habit, and the old habits get overgrown and worn out. And now if you arrive at the cornfield, the easier thing to do is to go down the kindness route rather than the route that we've perhaps got used to through, let's say, the weight of life's experiences. So intentional acts of kindness, we have to put intention into it to get ourselves started if it's something new to us. But once you get going, it's like anything, it becomes a natural state.
Yeah, and one thing that I absolutely love about our biology and ourselves as humans is our capacity, the plasticity of our brains, right?
Yeah.
How much power we have in our intentional decisions to rewire our brains and build those new paths, right? That takes us to better places or different places, right? And how that changes our brains and the circuitry of our brains and the kind of chemicals we're releasing in our bodies. I just think that's so beautiful.
I know. I remember years ago, the idea that the brain was neuroplastic was
Yeah.
completely like an alien idea, and people
Yeah.
didn't believe it at
Yeah.
first. And now we know it. It's like taking dough and molding it into any shape that you want before you put it in the oven. And we
Yeah.
didn't realize we could do that. And
Yeah.
that's the beauty of any habit. But kindness, what we do know from kindfulness practices, to use that word again, when people actually, in formal research studies, if people actually sit and, as odd as this might sound, think kindly of people. You know, there's formal ways you could do it. There's a Buddhist meditation technique called metta, or loving kindness, where you actually think of people and you say, may you be happy and well and safe, and may you feel at ease. And you repeatedly use those words. So you're generating this sentiment, something along those lines. What you get is this neuroplasticity in the brain, and particularly building brain circuits in happiness regions of the brain. And that's why physiologically in the brain, kindness is associated with happiness. But what's amazing also, and I meant to add this, is if I was to ask, what do you think is the opposite of stress? I think most people answer that with it's peace or it's calm. But in actual fact, peace or calm are the absence of stress, not the opposite of stress. Physiologically and neurologically speaking, the opposite of stress is kindness. So, in
Wow.
other words, the opposite of the experience of stress is the experience of kindness. And if you chart in the brain and all throughout the body, the heart, the immune system, your nervous system, you chart all the physiological effects of stress, you'll find that the physiological effects of kindness are exactly opposite. It's like a seesaw.
Wow.
As kindness goes up, stress goes down, physiologically speaking, and the other way as well. What we actually know in the brain is when you have an experience of kindness, these kindness hormones that you produce actually dial down a region towards the back of the brain that's associated with stress and fear and worry. And it's like a dimmer switch. Like if you went into a room and the room was too bright, you might turn down the dimmer switch, or the music was too loud, you could turn down the dial. And so in the brain, there's a dial on this, like a metaphorical dial on the stress region of the brain. And the experience of kindness actually dials the dial down. And that's why, and neurologically, it is the opposite of stress, even in the brain.
Oh man, that is so powerful.
Yeah.
And in the I know this has been going on for a long time, right? But I think in the past about 4 or 5 months, I have read more and more research coming out saying that if you haven't crossed a threshold of stress and depression, for example, where you need professional help and or medication, below that threshold, there are other ways to heal from the effects of stress and depression, right? And some of those ways are going out for a walk or engaging in physical activity and engaging in act of kindness, right? If you haven't crossed that threshold. And I love how I didn't think about kindness being chemically the opposite of stress, but it's just so powerful to know that if you feel stress at work, for example, you may want to double down in the kind of behaviors or thoughts that are making you more stressed. But if you're intentional about saying, I'm not going to say that David is an awful person and he's stressing me. I'm going to say, peace be with you, David. I hope the best things happen to you, David. And I'm saying all those things in my mind. What I'm doing is decreasing my levels of stress because I'm increasing my levels of kindness. I think that's so powerful.
Yeah. And actually, in your brain and body, it's like the antidote. It's like you're targeting the specific regions of your brain and your nervous system and your cardiovascular system, and you're delivering an antidote to the stress that's literally generating the opposite set of conditions inside your brain, therefore inside your mind and your experience, and inside your body.
Oof, that is fantastic. And I want to use this as a segue actually to talk about the 5 side effects of kindness. And I want to ask you the question in this way so that you can bring that idea of the 5 side effects of kindness here. you said it before, right? If we are going to cross the cornfield and we're used to using the same pathway, it's a path of least resistance. So that's the one we're gonna try to take all the time. So if we are to create a new path, we have to have a reward, so to speak, right? There's got to be a prize at the end of that path, because I don't think we would want to do the hard work unless we know that there's something else nicer, better, cooler that's going to happen at the end of us doing the hard work in opening that new path. So, talking about the 5 side effects of kindness, and in general talking about the price of engaging in acts of kindness, can you develop this? Can you tell us more about what's going to happen with our bodies, what's going to happen with our minds, what's going to happen with our relationships with other people when we do this hard work that is retraining the kind muscle?
Yeah, so the reward or the side effect that you get is, well, first of all, kindness makes you feel happier. And so the first side effect is kindness improves mental health. So it's very, very good for your mental health. It boosts happiness, but it's also protective against depression in the long term. Again, before that person crosses over that particular threshold that you mentioned, but there's a protective effect against depression and anxiety in the long term. But the second side effect is that kindness is actually good for your heart. It's good for your cardiovascular system. So one thing we know is there's a blood pressure lowering effect, and that even works when we are kind to animals. In fact, some studies show that when we're kind to dogs or cats, or even rabbits. So I'm describing here animals that people tend to have in their families. There's a protective effect against heart attack and stroke in the long term. And it's due to not just having these animals in your family, it's due to the kindness and the empathy and the affection and the warmth that you show them, which is really just another version of how displays we show humans as well. So when we are being kind and gentle and showing empathy and compassion to each other, helping each other, then we get more or less the same sort of protective effect. Another protective effect kindness has, or a side effect, is kindness actually slows the aging process. And there's a number of different ways that aging occurs in the body, but one of them is through chronic stress. And most people know that stress causes an acceleration of aging. So if kindness is physiologically the opposite of stress, then obviously kindness will have a lowering effect. But one of my favorite studies in this was scientists were monitoring the rate of aging of skin cells. And so they were studying the effects of, for example, if skin gets exposed to too much sunlight, for example, or too much mental and emotional stress or lifestyle stress, then what you find is there's groups of substances that form inside the cells. One's inflammation, the other one's called free radicals, and they form inside the cell and they directly accelerate aging of skin. So scientists did this experiment where they simulated this environment, and what they found is these two substances peaked very, very quickly when they put them under stress. But then they did the experiment again. This time, they put a few drops of kindness hormones, so those products of the experience of kindness, and they put them into the cell culture. And amazingly, the levels of these substances dramatically dropped. And what they showed is that once kindness hormones, these products of the experience of kindness, get into our skin, there's a dramatic reduction in the rate of biological aging of the skin. I mean, I have been practicing this for 104 years. Yeah,
wow.
Joking.
Well, and you look so young. Just
Thank you.
kindness keeps you young, right?
Yeah.
Happy 140th birthday.
But joking aside, there is a very clear reduction in the rate of aging that's associated with repeated experiences of kindness, just like there's a marked increase in the rate of aging that's associated with repeated experiences of stress. Yeah. So it's just a physiological opposite that plays itself out in some of the internal effects inside the human body. And so that's the third side effect. The fourth side effect is an improvement in the quality of our relationships. And I think this is the most obvious one for people, because we tend to like people who are kind to us. We feel safe around people who are kind to us. Even in the workplace, we feel under less pressure. We feel better able to expand it and to try new things, to experiment, to learn, to develop and grow without the fear of what will happen if I get it wrong, what will happen if I make a mistake. So what we find in lots and lots of bits of research is once there's an experience or a culture of kindness, relationships tend to deepen and tend to strengthen and become much more of higher quality. And the fifth side effect is that kindness is contagious. Yeah. And it actually has an R number of somewhere between 3 and 5. And I use the term R number because I think most people nowadays are familiar with R numbers. And it turns out that this R number, I say between 3 and 5 because R numbers vary for a number of reasons, depending on contact, how many interactions you have, where you live in the world, all different things. But roughly speaking, it can be between 3 and 5. But amazing research at Harvard and Yale found that this contagious effect ripples out to what's called 3 degrees of separation. Now, what that means, let's use the example of 5, of the R number of 5 to make this point. And what it means is if you be kind to someone, then what happens is you be kind and then you walk away and you think nothing else of it. What you don't see is what happens next. The person that you've been kind to, the person that you've helped in some way, because of how you make that person feel, that person will more likely be kind or kinder over the next 24 hours or so to 5 people because of how you made them feel. Now, that's where the R number comes in. That's what the R number feels. Yeah. And those 5, that's what the R number means. And those 5 people are at 1 degree of separation from you. They're 1 degree separate from you. But what the research found is kindness goes to 3 degrees. So if you had a drone, not that you would do this, but if you did and you tracked those 5 people over the next day, what you'll also find, probably those 5 people will also be kind or kinder to 5 people. Now, because of how they feel. So what you now have is 25 people at what's 2 degrees of separation from you. But if you had a swarm of drones, again, not that you would do that, but if you did, and you tracked all these people, triangulated their movements and studied what they did, then over the course of the next day, what you would probably find is those 25 would also be kind or kinder to 5 people. Then what you have at 3 degrees of separation from you, about 125 people benefiting. And although the numbers are not exact because things vary, these are averages, but the point is what you get is a ripple effect that goes outwards. And the more kindness you create, the more ripple effects you generate. And right at the very beginning of this session, you talked about that culture change doesn't have to be top down, because at every level, just being kind yourself begins to form this. And this is how it works through the contagion, because kindness spreads. And if each of us can be leaders then in this culture change by simply choosing to create a habit of kindness. Let this be the way I lead. Let this be the way I interact with people, the way I treat people from now. And then you set a ripple effect in motion, whatever level of a workplace that you operate from.
I think that is absolutely powerful. And in fact, I was going to follow up your response and you talking about the 5 side effects of kindness by going back to what I said at the beginning, which you just mentioned, which is, and I truly believe in this, by the way, that the cultures that we want to see in the workplace, they don't just happen, right? We have to build them, and they can't be mandated either. I mean, even if you are, which happens often, by the way, you create some indicators of accountability for the leaders to say, these are the 4 things about the cultural transformation that you're going to be assessed on, and you're going to be rewarded on those things. Even when that's true, that's not how culture is built, because you are just checking the box. It's in your everyday interactions that are more natural and more human, more organic, so to speak, where you build those great cultures. So kindness has to become an organic thing in a culture for that culture to actually be a culture of kindness. And that's why I continue to tell everybody in our community, you know, it doesn't matter if you don't have any formal power, and if you only work with one more person in your company, be kind to that person. And now you have the science. You know, David just said it, right? I mean, if you're kind with that person may be kind with 5 more people whom you are may not be connected with in the company. And that ripple effect is just so powerful in creating that organic culture of kindness. And that to me is just the power that we have to make that happen is just unfathomable, so to speak.
Yeah, well said. That's a wonderful way to put it, and it's a terrific way to bring it home, that message that there is a hugely contagious effect of kindness. And what I love about this kind of stuff is I love that science has started to research this whole phenomenon of what the experience of the effects of the experience of kindness. So this is why I've been working in this field for a while, because it's my favorite subject. And I think you captured it really well there when you said it's these small, everyday, organic acts of kindness. You don't have to do. It's a question I often get asked about what constitutes an act of kindness. And I think sometimes we think that to be kind, it has to be something big and obvious.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's the everyday organic, to put it in, use your line. I love the way you put that. The everyday organic, these small, individual, ordinary acts of humanness in the way that we treat people and speak to people and interact with people. Those are the ones that carry the most power. Those are the ones that set in motion the ripple effect. And it means
they are genuine.
Yeah, all the time. So you don't have to have a massive position of power or lots and lots of resources. You just have to decide to commit these human, organic, everyday, ordinary, small acts of kindness and compassion and generosity and warmth and goodwill to each other. And it has a tremendous effect. Don't ever, I would say to people, is don't ever underestimate your own power to cause change, because every single small act, even the ones that you don't think matter, because you do this all the time and you don't really think about it, you're just a naturally kind person, but never underestimate the power of a single act of kindness to set in motion something tremendous that you might not recognize or might not ever realize started out as something that you participated in.
That is so powerful. And David, about a month ago, I think I wrote an article called "The Power of One." And pretty much the bottom line of the article, the bottom line that I wanted to convey was that we can't change the world, but we can change a world. And that world is the world of that one person, the only person that we work with in our companies, our only colleague. We won't be able to change the entire world and make it more kindness, but we can be more kind to that one person and change his or her world, that one world. Maybe that person that day is going through some hardship, right? And some difficulty, some adversity. And just by asking them, what's new, what's going on with you, how can I help? I'm here to listen to you, whatever it is, right? In whatever way you kindly interact with them, you are changing that specific world. And that to me, to me, that thought is empowering, to be honest, and it's sobering, to know that with all the things that are going on in the world, we have the power to change a world and probably many a worlds. So that to me, it's really, really empowering. David, let me ask you this. Since you started doing your work in kindness, the past many years, probably 120 maybe about that, but in the past few years that you've been working on kindness, what are some of the most exciting discoveries that you have seen science unveiling about kindness? What are some of the most exciting things that you've seen coming out of, recent or maybe even older science about kindness?
Well, for me, one of them I've already mentioned there is the fact that we can now see that kindness is physiologically the opposite of stress.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that for me, when I made that connection, just blew my mind away. I mean, I had always myself assumed if someone had asked me even 2 years ago, what's the opposite of stress? I would have said peace or calm, tranquility, something along those lines. But in actual fact, those represent the absence of stress, not the opposite. Yeah. The opposite of stress in terms of the opposite conditions inside the body and inside the brain is the experience of kindness. And that for me was just, it blew me away. And I think some of the stuff around how kindness hormones, these products of what kindness is like, of the experience of kindness, how they track their way through the body, the multiple effects. So one of the things they do is they actually park on the lining of blood vessels. They release the tension on the walls of blood vessels, causing blood vessels to expand. At that point, your heart doesn't have to push as hard to get the blood through, so your heart eases off its pressure.
Mhm.
And this is why kindness causes a reduction in blood pressure, or the experience of kindness. And what they call it now is the experience of kindness is cardioprotective. And what it means is it protects your cardiovascular system. It doesn't guarantee that nothing could ever go wrong, but there's a protective effect that comes through consistent experiences of kindness. Even if you're the witness to it, you don't always have to be the giver. You can literally be in an environment where you just make a point of noticing other people's kind behavior, and that can have a similar kind of effect as well.
Wow.
But these are some of my most exciting ones. I used to work in cardiovascular medicine, so that for me was something that particularly interested me.
Yeah, and the best thing of all is it's free.
Yeah.
And the secondary effects of engaging in an act of kindness are always positive for you and for everybody else. So I think
it's a win-win.
That's quite a selling point, huh?
Yeah.
Now, David, let me ask you this. When you think about kindness, and particularly in the workplace, of course, in general in society, but particularly in the workplace, if you had a magic wand to instill in everybody's mind, these are the 5 top acts of kindness that you should be engaging every day in your life. And I don't want to be prescriptive, but I want people to walk away also with the meaning of what an act of kindness actually is, right? Because maybe they are already engaging in them and they don't know, and maybe they are not doing them at all. So what are the top maybe 3 to 5 powerful acts of kindness that are ordinary that people can engage with, right after this conversation?
I think, if to make it really quite general, I think just treating people, it's not so much what we physically do that constitutes kindness, it's the way in which we do it. And so an act of kindness could be simply just showing people respect, just being respectful of people, respectful of people's needs, respectful of people's position, where people are in their lives, cutting people that little extra bit of slack. And I think showing people compassion, also speaking kindly to people, like even just recognizing that the way in which we communicate to people can really impact people, because everyone's different. And some people thrive when they're spoken to in a particular way, but other people need a gentle approach, like a gentle sort of touch. So I don't think it always comes down to specific things that we do. It's more about how you do the things that you do, if that makes sense. And it means that it doesn't matter what company you work for or what environment you're in. It means that, very generally speaking, everything that you do, whatever you do, just do it with kindness. Just become aware of what would doing this thing that I do, and the way that I interact with people, and the way that I carry out my role in this organization, if I was to do this with a little bit more kindness, what would that look like? What would that be like? And even think for a second of what the consequences of that might be. And I think that's how we start to build things, because everyone's different. Everyone has different environments. So we have different things specifically that we do. Yeah. But if we think about it as how I do the things that I do, then I think it brings it home that, there's a million things really that we can do, I suppose. Yeah. I know that's quite a vague answer. I'm just trying to, I guess, broaden things, because everyone's in different environments and different situations, and what's kind for one person might not necessarily sound as the kind thing to do for someone else.
Yeah, and there are things that may come more naturally to some people to do, even in the way they are asking somebody else how they are doing, even in the way they are phrasing those kind of questions. There are ways that are or approaches that are more natural to each of them. Just adding that layer of kindness to everything. That's just a powerful idea.
I like that, actually, just asking people how they're doing, because that's one of the simplest things. And from a mental health perspective, that's one of the most powerful things we can do, is just to ask someone how they're doing. Actually, backpedaling back a little bit, one of the ways that I often help people to find what constitutes an act of kindness for them is to set people a little challenge. I call it the 7-day kindness challenge. And the idea is, and this means that you can, regardless of where you work and what your role is, then you can apply this, because kindness for one person might look differently to kindness for another. And so the 7-day kindness challenge is, you've got to do something kind every day for 7 days. It could be something you say or something you do, but there's 3 guidelines. And the first guideline, it has to be something different every day. So if you make someone a cup of tea one day, you can make them a cup of tea the next day, but it doesn't count.
Yeah.
Because you've done it once. So you can do it as many times as you want, but you only count it the first time. So 7 different things in 7 different days. The second thing is, if you can, just push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit. In other words, do something that maybe stretches you a little bit. I say that in the context of the way we build muscles. To use the analogy that you used earlier, the way we build muscles is to stretch them and push them a little bit harder. So if it's possible, just a little stretch out of your comfort zone. And what that does is it builds habits of kindness. We realize that there's other things that I can do, and I don't have to play it safe all the time. There's other things I can say. Look at the reward, how I felt. Wow, amazing. And then the third one is, one of your acts of kindness has to be anonymous. So no one gets to know what you did. Or if people know what you did, if people know about something, they don't get to know that you were the person who did it. So those are the 3 guidelines. And what they do, what this 7-day kindness challenge does, is it helps to create a habit of these intentional acts of kindness that you spoke about earlier. It helps to create a habit of making intentional acts of kindness, realizing what they look like or what they could look like for your specific environment that might look different from someone else's specific environment. But it builds that habit and that good feeling, and recognizing, wow, this is really good. I enjoy this, but look at the culture it's creating around me just doing this, because other people will probably try it also.
Yeah. Oh, that is so fantastic. David, thank you so much for sharing all this awesomeness with me, with our community, with the world, through your book, The 5 Side Effects of Kindness. This has been an amazing conversation, and I sure hope that we can have you again, because there's so much that there's a lot that we have to do, right? To inspire people and encourage them to be more kind, and to embrace that power that they individually have to create a kinder world, a kinder society, and of course, kinder workplaces. So once again, David, thank you so much for being here with me and sharing all these insights with our community.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. And thank you for inviting me to share with your community. It's been really an enjoyable little while chatting about my favorite subject.
Well, thank you so much. And Daisy didn't have a cameo on the show. She's got to be, she's excited about the kindness conversation. There she is. She's just listening, tuning in, and paying.
She's 18 months old. Her name is Daisy.
Yeah. She's been just paying attention to the kindness conversation. So she's expecting.
She's tired. She's exhausted. She's falling asleep.
She's expecting a kind treat from Dad after this 1 hour show.
Yeah, definitely.
So David, thank you so much. I will see you soon. And everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. And please check out the other live chat series that we have posted on our website. And please stay tuned, because we're going to be doing many more of these conversations going forward. So thank you so much. Thank you, David. You all have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye then.